Hello and welcome to the channel. If you came through the channel, if you just saw this video and the suggestions, welcome to this video. Maybe consider having a look at the channel. Appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully what you're about to see is helpful to you. Fingers crossed. If you do flick over to the channel and you want to subscribe, maybe that would be wonderful. We've just hit 350 subscribers as this video goes out. So thank you to all 350 of you. I love you all individually and specially and especially you. So, without further ado, let's get into today's video. We are going to create a character for a kid's book. Now, that's kind of what I do mainly, is cartoons for kids books, illustrating kids books. So I thought today we would do something. We'll still stick along the lines of animals, because that's kind of what I do, is animal stuff. And I thought today we would do a polar bear for a kid's book. So I've already got a reference image here. I will chuck the link to this reference image in the bit below, the section below, so you can draw this polar bear as well if you like. You can do your own polar bear. You don't have to do this polar bear. So yeah, so that's what we'll do. We'll create a cute polar bear for a kid's book. Now, I'm using this polar bear as reference. A lot of artists will get multiple images up as reference. I thought for the sake of this, we'll just stick with the one. This cute polar bear here. So this, a lot of the time what you'll do is, if you are doing kids' books, you'll get contacted by whoever has written the book or whatever, and they'll say, this is what it's about. Could you send me some ideas for the character? So you will send through a character sheet. That obviously doesn't necessarily have to be an animal. It could be a character, or a person, or a kid, or whatever. But today we are doing a polar bear. So let's get on with it and draw a polar bear. This guy, just sniffing around, looking for some fush. We're going to draw him. We'll draw him exactly the same way as we would do any of our characters that we've drawn in the past. If you look at my videos, what we're going to do, slightly different with this one though, is we're going to make him a bit more cutesy, because he's for a kid's book. So we're going to use this basic shape, because I love the pose that this polar bear's in. So what we'll do is we'll get his head in first, and then what we'll do is we'll get in his basic body shape. So don't forget, we're always looking for those basic shapes. Almost looks like a nose. You can put a couple of eyes there. Oh look, it's a... Anyway, getting distracted. So we'll put in his body. Next, really like outstretched. He's like, I smell fish. Let me eat them. Actually, it's probably more like a seal, isn't it? It's probably hunting a little poor baby seal. Let's get his snout in. So it's all about these basic shapes, as we always talk about. Just look for those basic shapes. The head, it's a circle. The nose, there's like this sort of basic square, it's like a vase or a vase, however you say that. Let's chuck in a little bit of a schnozzer. Again, don't forget, this is a cartoon, so, obviously emphasize little bits and pieces like his schnozzer. This always happens to me. I always draw way too big, but digital art, hey look, all of a sudden it's good again. I used to do this when I was doing traditional art. I'd always do that. I'd always draw way too big, and then oh god, now I can't fit this on the page. Okay, let's chuck in just some basic feet to start with. 1 foot slightly up off the ground, or the ice. Let's put in there. Let's get his bit of belly in there, back foot in here, and bottom. The nice easy one to practice on as well. Nice easy one. So there's our basic shape for our polar bear, already done in that short amount of time. You can see it looks polar bear-esque or bear-esque. Not to be confused with burlesque. So there's your sort of bear. Okay, so someone says, I want a bear in my story. I want a story about a polar bear. And so okay, there's your polar bear scene. Now, eyes wise, we're talking kids book. So I mean, you could just sort of, I would err on the side of, because obviously the polar bear's eyes are quite small, but I would always err on the side of making them a bit bigger, so you can a bit more expression. So then you can, you know, chuck in this eyebrow here, get his pupil in there. See, he's already got it. You can do a bit more expression with a big eye like that than you can with a sort of small eye. I mean, you can still make small eyes quite expressive, but that's more in the eyebrows and what you're doing around it. So yeah, so for me personally, for something like this, I would be going this sort of bigger eye. I'm going to make him, he's obviously sniffing something out, so I'll make his sort of furrow his brow slightly. So he's like, what is that? What is that smell? I smell you. I smell you. I will find you and I will rip you to pieces. Okay, it's a kid's book, remember guys, come on. So let's just, now, mouth-wise, we could just give him that little bit. See if you can't really see it, but this picture's very grainy. But his sort of mouth runs not quite how I've done it. It's more at the back here, like that. But if you wanted to, you could, because again, don't forget we're talking cartoon, so we changed the mouth position. So obviously it's up here. Now it looks more angry. He's like, I find you. But for the sniffing out, you could just, I mean, you could put in a little line or a little circle, however you like. I mean, obviously this is his cheek part, but you need if having a mouth down here, probably, I mean, you could get away with that actually. I was going to say that's not where you really want it, but it kind of works. But I would always, with cartoons, with the mouth, the expression of the mouth, I would always tend to put it around here. You'll see most of my characters, if you see my drawings, will tend to have their mouths sort of here. You know, as I said, circle expression with a little bit of a lip under it. Just gives you more to play with there. Now, let's have a look at our head shape for this guy, because the head kind of runs flat and then into our sort of shoulder position. Feet with your bear. You can literally just, obviously he's just got these big toes. Less is more for me when it comes to like you can see this bear's got 1, 2, 3, 4, it almost looks like he's potentially got, I think, 5 by those things there. I don't know. I'm not an animal anatomist, but I would tend to, just with a bear, not worry about, you know, again, kid's book. I would just stick with your 3. Now, there's obviously lots of different ways when it comes to the colouring. When it comes to kids' books, a lot of people like the traditional look, traditional painted look, where you would just draw your sketch and then you would like paint it out. I don't do that, and because quite simply I can't do that. It's not so. I mean, it's not something I do very regularly or practice very much. So again, it's all about practicing your craft in different ways. I probably should have that in my arsenal, and I will get to it at some point. But the thing is, at this stage, in what I'm doing, I get work based on what I do at the moment. So I focus on that because it's what essentially gets me paid. So once I have some free time, or any time I got free time, I will look at working on that. All I've done is just put him on a piece of ice, basically. So this is potentially be something similar to how I would send. Obviously, if a client had contacted me and said, "Oh, well, I want a story about a polar bear," I wouldn't just send the one image of a polar bear. I'll color this and everything like that, and then we would do another sketch. I'd find another pose of another polar bear, probably standing up. I also sometimes will give them different styles. So I would do that, or I potentially, you know, do a more sort of even more cartoon version, like standing up style. But for the purposes of this video, we'll stick to the one. Okay, I think we're almost. Oh, he's got a bit of a tail, doesn't he? Let's not forget the tail. A bit of some water. Head popping out of the water. I don't know what a seal looks like. Not off the top of my head. I've never drawn a seal before. Maybe that's a video I should do. Alright, so let's get rid of our reference now, and let's ink this guy. Down the opacity. New layer. Let's do inking. I've been playing around with a new inking pen. I'm just wondering whether or not I use this inking pen for this particular thing. I think we'll stick with our normal just for now, because I haven't had a lot of practice with this new inking pen. Whereas with this one, obviously I use this all the time. I also think for kids books, this really gives you a nice, almost almost traditional look. Well, I mean, what is traditional? Again, we add a few more details as we're drawing. Around the eye, give it a bit more expression, a few more details, lines. Chuck in his little mouth here. His ears, don't forget he's a polar bear, so give it that fur look. Just flat lines everywhere. And what will set this apart, obviously, from anyone thinking it's just a bear, is obviously once we start colouring, and also where he's positioned. Obviously, we've chucked him on his ice cube or iceberg or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, let's make sure we're giving him some fur. Chuck in his feet here. His paws, sorry. So now I wouldn't tend to give them the claws for the kids' book. Again, because it's, I mean, let's be honest, he's not really, I mean, I did say cutesy, didn't I, to start with, but, I mean, I wouldn't call him cutesy. Okay, that's inking in these paws. It's very therapeutic inking. I find it very relaxing. Obviously doing it in semi-silence or just hearing my own voice, then normally I would be listening to some tunes. I think I've already plugged Maverick Sabre before, but if you haven't heard Maverick Sabre, chuck him on while you're doing some inking. Thank me later. Okay. There's our bear. We've got a few gaps happening here, so we make sure we fill those in so that when we come to paint, it's not going to leak. Okay, let's do a new layer for our iceberg or cube or whatever we decided on calling it. That way we can just deal with that separately. Don't forget you want to make it look 3D because, you know, it's not a flat object. And the way we do that with a solid object is with these lines here. Obviously perspective, I've said it in a number of my videos before, perspective is a very tricky thing. Well, I find it very tricky. I shouldn't say it's a very tricky thing because I find it particularly tricky. I don't think anyone finds it particularly easy. But yeah, I find it particularly tricky, perspective. So I would in no way try and attempt to teach you how to do it because my way is incorrect. There are, as I've said in plenty of my other videos, there are lots of great tutorials on the interwebs which can teach you about perspective. Again, mine's more trying to do it by eye. That line's probably needs to be a bit flatter. I'll leave that for now. I feel like most of my videos I spend going, yeah, we'll leave that for now. We'll come back to that. Okay, let's just check in a few extra little tufts of hair. Now with the eye, you can go the black pupil and give him color around the side. Sometimes I'll just make it like that, full black and then white around the outside, but I kind of like a pupil on this guy. Okay, let's color him in. New layer, reference image. Now for the color of the polar bear, you don't want to do. I wouldn't go down the. I mean, I'd say I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't go down the avenue of just making him white. I'd go an off-white, sort of more of a yellowy sort of off-white. If you look at polar bears, let's bring our polar bear back. See how he's not white. He's like a sort of off-white. I mean, you can hold down your picker. And obviously, it's not a great image. It's a bit grainy, but obviously we've got gaps. But that was that's a colour picker. Obviously, and I wouldn't make him that dark either. We still want white. Where's my? No, we're definitely gonna have to fill these gaps in. I was trying to be lazy there and drop the. Okay, let's go back up here now. We're just going to quickly go around and just check. As I said, I've said before with this pen, it's a nice pen. I like using it, but the problem with this pen is it does create some gaps. Fill in anything that could potentially leak. Sometimes you won't see a gap necessarily. It'll just be a thin line. It's leaking. See, that's potentially leaking there. That there, it's very thin, but that's potentially leaking. So just going around, oh, that's definitely leaking. Just touching up these little bits. Oh, and that one as well. Okay. Right, now let's go back here. Let's go back to our color. Let's go around here, see what that looks. See, yeah, there we go. I don't mind that at all. That's the sort of color I would be doing for the polar bear. Now, I always, with my animals, especially on the kids' book, like to make the inside of the ears pink. I think it just adds a nice little extra touch. Now with the black, as I said before, for his nose, I would go black, but I'd never go black. Otherwise, you'll get. Oh, it's not so bad on this because of the way we've done the nose, but still, sort of lose any detail you've done with your line work. So if you just go like that, you still get that black, but you've still got your detail in there as well. Let's make that part of the eye white. We'll give him. It's probably way too bright. do this all the time. Now, I was on the wrong layer. I've gone back to... What's just been filled in on there? Okay. Always remember to check which layer you're on before you start colouring. Okay. Going on here. There we go. Okay, then I'll nose colour again. Mouth. Now you could give him, if you wanted to, you could potentially give him just like a line there to show some teeth. Again, obviously more cartoony side of things. Don't mind that. Actually, I'm going to give him blue eyes. Why is that? Oh, you know what I've done again? No, I haven't done it again. So why is that? Maybe I've put that in there. Okay, let's just fill the eye to start with. We'll redo the pupil on this layer. Now pupil placement as well, depending on, I kind of want him looking in that direction. Okay, now let's just quickly colour the iceberg thing. Again, you don't really want white for the ice. I'll go a little bluey white. Gaps everywhere. Gaps. So many gaps. You know, if I was more careful with my line work in the beginning, I wouldn't have to waste time going back around and filling these, especially when I'm trying to do a bloody video. JK, why do your videos always go so long? Dunno. Okay. Let us go back to here. Yeah, that colour again. There we go. Actually, it's probably a little that blue probably would be better for this section here because you just find that ice is a bit darker. Oh, for crying out loud. I don't know how I've got 350 subscribers. Maybe these are just fun. They're more comical than useful. Have you seen this guy on YouTube who tries to show people how to draw? He's just shit. Oh, that's my point of difference. Okay, there we go. Now, let's do some shadowing. Goodbye, Mr. Polar Bear. Don't need you on there anymore. Now, new layer. Clipping mask. We want this one to sit between the polar bear line work and the colour. Clipping mask so that we don't go out of the lines. Let's get that colour back. Go for a darker version. Brown. No, I'm going to use this new pen for this. So this pen that I started using, I've got a shout out to a legend on Instagram. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I've got to actually look this up quickly. Enox Art. Enoxart. Guy from New Zealand. Absolutely phenomenal artwork. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, he does sweet stuff. He uses an inking pen. I was like, oh my god, that looks so sick. And he gave me the settings for the pen so that I don't use the pen as well as he does, whereas it's Studio Pen. Okay, but it just gives you this, just look at that nice taper. And what I'll do is I'll quickly share with you the settings. I'm sure he won't mind. So Studio Pen. So what you'll have to do is you'll probably have to maybe want to screenshot this or whatever, but go to your taper. So everything's at size at max, opacity at max, pressure at max, tip it is at 31%. Then your touch taper, you'll have to fix this because the original one, I think this end is right down this end. So bring those two together. Size max, opacity max. You can practice on here to make sure it looks right. So size max, opacity max, tip at 50%. Then I think the rest, wet mix, none disabled, none, 50% on pool, graded, near 0%, blur, blah, blah, blah. I'm just trying to remember what the other, so scatter is none, rotation is 0%. So if you just follow all these settings, pretty sure everything else is just turned off. Don't worry about colored in it, dynamics, and wet mix. So those are your settings. So as I said, you can go back and have a look at those in a second. But especially if you're doing animals, you'll see that, because I like to use the shadows to help with my fur. And look at that. Look at that. Oh, God, it's sexy. Have you seen this guy on the internet? He describes pens as sexy. Yeah, yes he does. Especially when they help me create sexy fur. It's all about getting used to it's how you use the pressure basically. It's you got to release, so it's pushing down hard and then just flicking up and letting that pressure. The lighter you push down on that pen, obviously the thinner the line, the harder you push, the thicker the other line. So it's getting used to starting off with a heavy pressure and then backing off with a little flick. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll just fill this completely in because this is going to be right behind his other leg. So we'll make this just all dark. A few more flicks of the pen through here. And again, let's make the size bigger. Let's just colour this in completely down here. I should show you the quicker way of doing this. So if you want to fill this in quicker, do an outline around where you want. If you're going to do a big one like this, do an outline like that. Make sure this is your reference, and then you can just literally drag and drop like that. There are obviously lots of quicker ways to doing these things. I tend to do a lot of other things. This is why I generally don't call these tutorials, because there are easier and quicker ways to do things. I do not claim to be an expert, or even very good. Someone commented on one of my videos going, "Is this good?" ? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think it's all right. I mean, I'm not claiming to be very good. It just made me laugh. Is this good? ? Fuck off! Sorry. That's exactly why I don't call them tutorials, to avoid comments of people going, what are you doing? Like, you can't teach people to draw. Well, I'm not trying to teach anyone to draw. I'm just showing you what I do, and if you fancy having a bloody go at it, have a go at it. If you don't like it, as I said earlier, fuck off. I'm now going to have to put a language warning on this video. Sorry, I apologise. I do not want to be foul-mouthed in my videos. Okay. So the internet's just full of people that just annoy you. There's also very lovely people too. Lots of lovely people actually making lovely comments on my videos, so thank you very much. All right, let's bring the opacity down. Boom, look at that. Look at that. Look at that, everybody. That is a polar bear that any author would be stoked to have in their book. If I don't say so myself, I'm sure the same goes with yours. So you don't want to overdo it. I have a habit of overdoing it because I get carried away. And then sometimes my wife even will be like, "Oh, you went really hard on the shadowing there." I'm like, "Oh, thanks. Thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate your feedback." Let me take a sip of my coffee while you just catch up. Which is now cold. I don't know why I make myself coffees and teas before I do these. That rhymed. Anyway. Okay, so let's change the... I'm going to put shadowing on the nose. Let's make it black for shadowing on the nose. Like so. So I'm going to change that to black under there as well. Look at that! Look at that! Big shout out to the legend for sharing those pen details, because that honestly has changed my life. Okay, so we can also add, if we want to, because obviously polar bear, if we look at those polar bears, they've got like a dirty sort of yellowy colour on them. So we can do a new layer, just in case. We'd always do new layers, people, in case we don't like how it turns out, how it comes out, so we're not stuck with it. Obviously there's undo features and everything like that, but if you sort of, especially when we're doing these, we're doing lots of strokes, and your undo is only going to go back so far. Eventually it will say, well, no, I'm not going back any further. You're trying to make me work too hard. So always put it on a completely new layer. Err on the side of caution. I'm just chucking in a little bit, so it just gives it a bit more interest. We'll pull down the opacity on this in a second. Just want to add, see what it looks like with a little bit of different colour in there. I feel like we need something here as well. The ear as well, just above the eye. Oh my god, I'm so in love with this pen. Do me a favour, if you watch this video and you use this pen and you get the pen settings and you like the pen and all the rest of it, please do me a favour and go on Instagram and shout out Enox. Here he is again. I mean, he's got 100. Oh no, he's got 18,000 followers. I mean, he's doing well. But that's because his art is amazing. I don't even know if you can see that, but anyway, ENOXART, Enox Art. I think I'm saying that right. Go and give him a follow. Give him a shout out. Say, J Cases, you're an absolute legend. Thank you. Because it's important. There's a lot of people that are very protective over settings for their pens and stuff like that, and I completely understand. I get it. So he quite easily could have said, or just ignored me. Didn't have to, didn't even have to say anything. But he actually videoed himself looking at his settings, sent it to me, and I so appreciate it, because it has just changed my life when it comes to, especially for fur, because I'm a guy who does a lot of fur. So it's just, although I'm working on a kid's book at the moment, which has got a lot of animals in it, and now I'm like, oh, I kind of want to go back, but I can't. It's a lot of work. I cannot go back. All right, so let's just go to our iceberg, new layer, clipping mask. Let's just make these darker here. Again, I'm really doing this the long way around. shorter way of doing this. Do the outline. Make sure this is your reference. Pop it in like that. No point for something as small as this. Just fill it in. Same for this, obviously. Okay, let's bring the opacity down a touch on that. I want just a slight shadowing there. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record and repeat myself a lot, but shadowing, there is definitely the right technique to doing shadowing, which is not my technique. Plenty of videos on the interwebs that can teach you the best way and the right way to shadow. I feel like I have to do these disclaimers so I don't get comments like, is this good? Hasn't affected me at all, that comment, just so you know. Like, Alright, let's do a new layer. Let's do some highlights on the ice. So obviously, it is made up of water, so it reflects. Boop, 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 boom. I was going to put in another character there, but I don't think we will. In fact, let's get rid of our sketch now, because we don't need that. What we will do though, so he's not like he's floating in midair, let's put a little bit of water. Now water, we don't go blue, blue. I don't go blue, blue for water. Let's make that a reference. Oops, didn't mean to invert that. Let's make that a reference. Like that. Now the problem is when you do something like this, you've now got to, obviously that looks weird. So we've got to, just going to chuck in some white lines to give the effect of, you know, ripples in the water. Obviously the water underneath would be a dark colour. Put on a new layer so I can mess around with the opacity. Again, there's no specific technique that I'm using. Not that that will surprise you. I'm just making it look a little fluid. Obviously, we were talking water, so it wouldn't, you know, there's no jagged edges or anything like that. Let's bring the opacity down a touch. Like so. I mean, obviously his head's leaning over the water, so I mean, you could, if you wanted to, get really funky and create the shadow that his head might be creating, like that. Show that he's leaning over the water, like so. There you go. I think that'll do us. So there you go. Oh no, hold on. Wait. I've just noticed something I don't like. We can't leave this foot just weirdly floating like this. Now the problem is, what I've done, I've got to now try and see if I can match that colour. There we go. It's just, that foot's slightly up, and that foot is obviously also slightly up. So we want to, don't have the shadow, we don't obviously shadow like, I mean you could do a shadow like that, but I reckon that looks better. This isn't right either. Yeah, okay, alright. Let's call that done, otherwise we're going to get carried away here. All important signature, it's the first time signing with a new pen. Boom! And there we have it. one polar bear in the water, in the ice. You got the new pen settings. So, as I said, please, if you do anything after watching this video, even if you don't subscribe to this channel, please, if you use those pen settings, please make sure you go on Instagram and give my man a shout out. I'm going to put his details in the description below. So if you need to find his Instagram, you can find it down there. I'm looking at this polar bear now while I'm talking to you, and I'm going, oh, that needs fixing. But anyway, there's your polar bear, everyone. Enjoy whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, evening, whatever it is happening, wherever you are, whatever time, date, etc. Have fun. I'll see you on the next one.